The unthinkable challenge. The arena was a cathedral of fear. Millions of alien eyes shimmered in the darkness of the Colosseum stands, their bioluminescent gazes fixed on the pit below. The walls pulsed with the crimson glow of containment fields, humming with power as the great gates shuddered open. The air vibrated with anticipation, thick with the scent of ozone and sweat. They had gathered from across the galaxy, ambassadors, warlords, merchants, and scholars alike, all for the same reason: to witness the thing they called the Apex. It was not a name given lightly. In every known sector, across 27 star systems, no predator, organic or engineered, had ever stood against it and lived. Entire civilizations had built their myths around its terror. Its hide was said to be impervious to plasma fire, its claws sharper than monomolecular blades, and its speed terrifying. Tonight, for their entertainment, a new challenger had been thrown into the pit. A human. The laughter had begun the moment the thin figure was dragged in by two guards of the Krivthale species, towering brutes clad in obsidian armor. The alien crowd rippled with amusement, their voices like thunder rolling across the Colosseum. Primitive flesh, bare skin and brittle bone. A child of prey, not predator. The human stood quietly. He was lean, dressed in nothing but ragged trousers. His bare chest rose and fell calmly, eyes fixed not on the crowd, but on the far gate where the Apex waited. He did not tremble. He did not rage. He simply watched. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, translated into 1,000 languages at once. Behold, the Apex, and the human. The far gates exploded open. The Apex emerged in a storm of chains and roars, dragging with it the sound of cracking stone. It was colossal, 7 meters tall, its hide a shifting plate of obsidian scales that shimmered like oil under the crimson glow. 6 eyes glared forward, burning with green fire, and its maw unfolded into serrated jaws lined with teeth as long as swords. The crowd erupted in exultation. The Apex roared, the sound shaking the very ground, a bass thunder that rattled bones. Chains snapped as it slammed its tail against the floor, sparks spraying as its claws raked the containment walls. The human smiled. Not mockery, not arrogance, just a quiet, strange smile. The alien ambassadors in the stands shifted uneasily. They had expected tears, or perhaps blind fury. But this human looked almost entertained. Begin! The word set the world aflame. The Apex lunged. It was faster than lightning, a blur of claws and scale and hunger, closing the gap in the blink of an eye. The crowd surged to its feet, eager for blood, their voices merging into a single tide of anticipation. But instead of being torn apart, the human rolled. A perfect, simple tumble, as if dodging an overeager sparring partner. Dust sprayed, claws gouged the ground, but flesh was untouched. The Apex roared again, spinning with fury, tail whipping like a storm. The air cracked with its force. The human ducked beneath it, fluid, effortless. His hands brushed the ground. Then he vaulted backward, landing in a crouch, still calm, still smiling. The crowd fell silent. For the first time in centuries, someone had evaded the Apex not with shields, not with technology, but with motion, with grace. The Apex screamed in frustration, claws carving great scars into the arena floor. It lunged again and again, each strike deadly, each miss more impossible than the last. The human danced around it, weaving between blows like water flowing around stone. Every move was calculated, but unhurried, as though he wasn't fighting for his life, as though this was fun. Whispers spread through the crowd. What is it doing? Why doesn't it attack? Is this play? Minutes stretched like eternity. Dust filled the arena, the Apex's roars growing more desperate, more enraged. Its movements lost their elegance, becoming sloppy in their fury. And still the human did not strike. Instead, he laughed. Just once, a sharp bark of amusement as he slipped between 2 claw strikes that would have cleaved a tank in half. The sound was so alien, so unexpected, that even the Apex faltered. The laughter echoed, carried, and for the first time in living memory, the galaxy's deadliest predator hesitated. The human straightened. His chest glistened with sweat, his breathing steady. He tilted his head, regarding the beast not as a foe, but as a puzzle. And then he moved forward. The crowd gasped as he closed the distance, stepping into the storm rather than away from it. The apex snarled and struck down with a claw the size of a starship hatch. The human caught it. Not with strength, no, his arms bent, his body flowed, redirecting the strike into the dirt beside him. He slid along its hide, climbing its arm as though scaling a cliff. The beast howled, thrashing, but he was already behind its head, one hand resting casually on the ridges of its skull. The Colosseum went silent. One fragile creature, one hand, on the head of the galaxy's ultimate predator. The apex froze. Its chest heaved, a low growl rising in its throat. But it did not move. Could have torn him off, crushed him, devoured him, but it didn't. Something in the beast's posture shifted. A shiver of uncertainty. Submission. The human leaned down, whispering something into its ear. No translator caught the words. But the apex rumbled low, almost mournful, and then lowered its massive body to the ground, coiling its claws inward. The crowd erupted into chaos. Ambassadors shouted into comms, guards scrambled, and warlords screamed in disbelief. The apex had never submitted, never bent, never acknowledged weakness. Yet before their very eyes, the galaxy's deadliest creature had laid itself down before a human. The announcer stammered, voice cracking across the loudspeakers. The match is unfinished, but the people knew. The human had not needed to kill. He had done something far worse. He had stripped the apex of its pride. The predator humbled. The arena was no longer just a stage. It was a wound cut open in the pride of 1,000 species. Every alien who had cheered for blood now sat in silence. The great Xyranth beast, the so-called apex predator of the known galaxy, had lunged, snapped, and slashed its claws, yet somehow impossibly, the human had slipped past every strike. What had been expected to end in seconds had turned into a drawn-out dance. And the human, instead of looking afraid, was grinning. The mockery of fear. Archaeris, High Commander of the Veiled Dominion, leaned forward in his throne. His scaled fingers dug into the armrest. He had bet not only credits but his reputation on this spectacle. A human lasts no more than a minute. That had been his wager. That was the statement that would remind the galaxy that Earth's species, fragile, soft-skinned anomalies, had no place in the hierarchy of predators. Yet here, in front of tens of thousands, a human was dismantling centuries of fear and myth. The creature roared, a thunder that rattled the walls of the arena. Dust shook free from the overhead arches. Its tail whipped the ground with the force of a battering ram. The air itself seemed to vibrate. The human, Marcus, didn't even flinch. He circled lightly on his feet, dodging the tail by mere inches. His hands remained relaxed, his breathing steady. He wasn't even armed. Just a man in a ragged uniform, eyes gleaming with something that unsettled every alien in the chamber. Enjoyment. Is he playing with it? Whispered a Zelu spectator, mandibles clacking nervously. He must be enhanced, hissed another. No natural being can move like that. But Archaeris knew better. The human had been scanned. No augments, no cybernetics, nothing but flesh, blood, and willpower. And that made it worse. The predator strikes. The Xyranth lunged again, faster this time. Its claws extended, sharp enough to rend steel. Its jaw opened wide, filled with fangs the length of daggers. It should have been unstoppable. It had been bred and perfected for war hunts, capable of tearing armored soldiers apart in seconds. Marcus moved at the last instant, ducking under its slash, rolling to the side. He tapped the creature's rib with his open palm as if mocking it. The audience gasped. The sound was soft, barely a touch. Yet the gesture was louder than any strike. "You're slow," Marcus muttered. His voice carried through the amplifiers into every corner of the chamber. All roar, no bite. The predator howled in rage, striking the ground where he had been. The floor cracked. Debris sprayed upward. But Marcus was already gone, weaving out of range with effortless grace. The fight had shifted. It wasn't predator versus prey anymore. It was humiliation. The apex predator was no longer hunting. It was being toyed with, breaking the illusion. Fear turned to something new among the crowd, doubt. The Veiled Dominion had paraded the Zyranth as untouchable, a beast of perfect design. Yet here was a human, smaller, weaker in muscle and bone, dancing circles around it. Every second that passed eroded centuries of propaganda. What if humans weren't weak? What if their true strength was something the galaxy had never measured? Marcus didn't attack. He didn't need to. Every dodge, every grin, every taunt broke the predator's pride more effectively than any weapon could. The crowd began to murmur, restless, shifting in their seats. "This is wrong," a senator whispered. "If they can humble this, what else can they do?" Arcari's jaw tightened. His gamble was unraveling. He had wanted to prove humanity's fragility. Instead, he had given them a stage. The clash. But pride is a dangerous thing. The Zyranth, bleeding from its own reckless strikes, stopped pacing. Its glowing eyes locked onto Marcus with a new kind of focus. No more testing swipes. No more intimidation. It lowered its body, muscles tensing, and let out a guttural growl that silenced the murmurs of the crowd. Then it charged, faster than before, a blur of claws and fury. Marcus didn't dodge. Gasps erupted. For the first time, he stood his ground. At the last instant, his hands shot up. He caught the beast's jaws, one hand gripping the upper, the other bracing the lower. The Zyranth thrashed, its strength monstrous, enough to shatter bone. Yet Marcus held. His arms trembled. His feet dug trenches into the dirt. But his eyes never wavered. He leaned forward, face inches from the snapping maw. "You think strength is about muscles?" he growled. "You think dominance comes from fear?" With a surge of will, Marcus twisted. The predator's head slammed into the dirt. The arena shook. The impossible had happened. The galaxy's deadliest creature was pinned beneath human hands. The silence after. No one spoke. No one breathed. The beast writhed, but it was over. Its pride was broken. Its roars had turned to frustrated whines. For the first time in its existence, the Zyranth knew fear. And Marcus let it go. He stepped back, brushing dirt from his sleeves as though nothing had happened. "I didn't beat it," he said, turning toward the stunned audience. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I just showed it could be beaten." He walked toward the gates, leaving the predator cowering behind him. The aftermath. The crowd erupted not with cheers, but with chaos. Some shouted in disbelief. Others demanded answers. A few simply stared, unable to comprehend what they had witnessed. The myth was broken. The galaxy's apex predator wasn't invincible, and a human had proven it. In the upper tiers, Arcaris sat frozen. His plan had turned to ash. Instead of diminishing humanity, he had elevated them. Fear rippled through the assembly like a contagion. Because if a human could humble their strongest beast without weapons, what could they do in war? A final message. As Marcus reached the exit, he paused. He looked back once, his eyes meeting the thousands of alien stares. "You call that your deadliest creature?" he asked. His voice carried like thunder. "On Earth, we call that practice." Then he was gone. And the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, began to wonder if perhaps they were not the predators after all.